Hi friends, I'm Scott Giles, and welcome to Power Talk, my podcast here on Facebook Live and YouTube. I cover topics related to spirituality, hypnotic coaching, and the hypnotic arts and sciences in general. If you'd like to know more about my professional work, and I hope you do, check out my website, which I'll tag at the end of this video. And while you're there, why not sign up for my free e-newsletter, Power Lines? Now, today I take as my foil for this podcast an article that appeared in the May 19th, 2023 edition of the Washington Post entitled Happiness is Fleeting, Aim for Fulfillment by Gregory Scott Brown, MD. Dr. Brown is a psychiatrist who spends a lot of time dealing with depressed people. They all tell him they want to be happy, and I completely get that. As a hypnotist, I hear something similar from most of my clients too. As I do a lot of work with patients who have medical issues, they often tell me that they want to be well. Well, the problem with those responses is that they actually convey very little information. No one wants to be sick and sad. So telling me that you want to be happy and well really isn't a helpful answer because I knew that. The really neat idea that Dr. Brown puts forward in his article is that he tells his depressed patients that they should try to be fulfilled, not happy. Because happiness doesn't last, but fulfillment is necessary to a good life. Now, in this, Dr. Brown actually mirrors the ideas of Dr. Milton Erickson, one of the greatest hypnotists of all time. Dr. Erickson pointed out that no one has ever had an emotional state that has lasted. Feelings change. The fact that you feel bad today or the fact that you feel good today does not mean that's how you're going to feel tomorrow or next week. Feelings are temporary. That is one of the things we stress when working with someone who has attempted suicide or is thinking of it. As far as we can tell, people who do that are acting somewhat impulsively because they feel bad right now. What they don't get is that negative feelings have what Erickson called a hallucinogenic quality. When you feel them, they cause the hallucination that the feelings will last forever. But that is false. They will not last forever. They will almost always pass. Fulfillment, on the other hand, isn't a feeling. It's a state of being. As Dr. Brown puts it, quote, "It is achieved when you accept who you are, make the most of what you have, and are optimistic about the future," unquote. Well, were I to rewrite that, I would probably take out the phrase optimistic about the future and replace it with something like hopeful about the future or at least content. And that comes from the fact that I sometimes encounter people in the final chapter of their life, and they're not going to be optimistic about a future they may not believe they will have. But they can be content or even pleased with what they have done with the time they did have, the happy parts of the relationships they'd enjoyed, and experience a measure of gratitude that there was more pleasure than pain in their lives. Now, when you feel bad, Dr. Brown suggests something he calls his HALT model, H-A-L-T. HALT stands for asking yourself if you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. If you are any of these things, you probably feel bad, but that feeling has a solution. You can get something to eat. Step away from whatever is making you mad. Talk to a therapist, coach, or friend about your feelings if you're really lonely. And my favorite, take a nap if you're tired. I'd also suggest involving a cat, but that's just me. The other pieces of advice in the article are common sense. Learn to adapt, develop meaningful relationships, don't live with regret, remembering that while you cannot change your past, you can change how you consider it. Now, all in all, I liked Dr. Brown's article a lot. I don't believe he's a hypnotist, so he's not aware of Erickson's observations about the hallucinogenic quality of dark emotions, but even without that, the notion that fulfillment is the goal of life, much more so than fleeting happiness, makes good sense to me. As a martial artist, I have studied most of the classical literature written by the martial arts masters of the past, books like Sun Tzu's The Art of War, Miyamoto Musashi's Book of Five Rings. But the book that stands out in my mind as I consider the theme of fulfillment is the lesser-known book by Miyamoto Musashi titled The Path of Aloneness. Now, for those of you who don't recognize his name, Musashi was a 16th century swordsman, poet, artist, and philosopher. He is sometimes called the Kenshi, or sword saint, in Japan, as he was probably the greatest swordsman who ever lived. But his book, The Path of Aloneness, is a book of aphorisms, or short and pithy statements about how to live. But taken as a whole, what the ancient master was suggesting is that one not live one's life in the service of temporary pleasures or things. Instead, focus on the things that last, because at the end, they will be what you're proud of. When you realize your life is coming to a close, you will not be proud of the fact that you've had great meals or drank a lot of fine wine or went to a lot of concerts. These things may have made you happy, but they do not fulfill you. What will fulfill you is the sense that your life has mattered somehow, that you stood for something besides momentary pleasure. Fulfillment, not the pleasure of happiness, is the better life goal. A happy person is not a better person in the same sense that a drunk person is not a better person than a sober one. The drunk person may be happier for the moment, but not better. Hey, thank you for your time and attention today. I'll be back next week with another talk on a different subject. You are invited. It does help me if you let others know about my work, so please like, share, and subscribe to my videos. And if I can be of help to you, feel free to reach out through email, my website, or the Patreon channel. Have a great week.